Are your company's digital assets secure? Find out right here on the Leadership Voice. Welcome to the Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show is about cybersecurity. Joining us are Garrett Graychick, CEO of UAttest, and John Young, CEO of Neutralize AI. We also have a great leadership lesson being delivered by Professor Sanjini Mitra. We have a lot of things coming, so let's get things started with our quote of the day. Today's quote comes from Apple Inc. CEO Tim Cook. In the world of cybersecurity, the last thing you want is to have a target painted on you. Our first guest today is John Young. John is CEO of Neutralize AI, a cyber defense consulting organization based in Southern California. John started out on the wrong side of the law when, as a teenager, he hacked into AT&T's phone system for years until the FBI scared him straight, thus starting his 40-year career in cybersecurity. He's internationally recognized for helping businesses prevent cybersecurity breaches. Please welcome to the show, John Young.
Thank you for the wonderful intro, Jay. I'm happy to be here.
John, it's great to have you here. We can talk about cybersecurity. A lot of our viewers may or may not know much about this topic, so this is our chance to really provide a resource to them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with talking about the history of cybersecurity. When did this become a thing?
I've been saying about computer security for 40 years, and only in the last 5 to 10 years has it really gotten some mainstream attention. As far as behind the scenes, commercially, there was almost no investment in cybersecurity in the beginning when I started in 1982, because nothing was happening. No one had modems even, or ways to get into a company. So basically it was overhead that was not necessary. When we really started to invest in cybersecurity was when we had wireless networks, VPN, people working from home. Because a lot of the times in the early days, it was physical breaches that would happen where laptops would get stolen, or people would do what we call dumpster diving and look for thrown out systems to grab the hard drives or maybe get passwords that they could find. So we've come quite a long way, and cybersecurity has turned from an afterthought to being super sophisticated and regulated.
So back in the day, you were talking about cybersecurity and you were warning about cybersecurity, but people didn't consider it much of a priority, did they?
Not at all. In fact, I had graduated from an IBM trade school where I learned 4 computer languages. And at the end, the board asked me, what did I want to do? And I said, I want to actually go to law school for computer security. And they said, computer security, what's that? So nowadays, you could ask anybody, what is computer security or cybersecurity? And they would know exactly what you're talking about. And every day, the awareness grows because of all of these data breaches that affect people personally.
So how has things changed? What's the current state of cybersecurity?
The current state of cybersecurity is that personally, everyone needs to be suspicious of every interaction that they have digitally or by phone. Companies are throwing millions and millions of dollars in hardware, software, and highly trained people to protect their intellectual property, the employees' confidential information. Yet the weakest point for an organization is going to be the people in other departments that basically don't have the IT operations skills because it's not their day job. So I think companies need to do a better job of making the whole organization aware that as a good corporate citizen, you've got to protect the organization no matter what your job is.
And so I was reading recently that some companies are getting attempts at breaching their security 50 times a day with different email phishing or different softwares. Companies really need to start preparing and being ready to protect itself.
Absolutely. 50 times. I mean, if you talk about a company like IBM, where I work, there's over 300,000 employees. So there might be thousands of attempts on a bigger company to get in every single day. That's why you hear about all these data breaches. For example, the stat is 30,000 websites are hacked on a daily basis. And that sounds like an impossible number, but there's 2 billion domains out there. So you could go for decades at 30,000 successful hacks a day, and it wouldn't really make a dent in the overall picture. So basically, I think that every company has to not only invest in it, but they have to train their employees.
So where do you see the future of cybersecurity going? What does the future hold for cybersecurity?
Now, this is an exclusive. This is the first time I'm going to say this on TV, Jay, but you know how there's AI stock picking software that's suddenly coming out? Everyone's talking about that, thinking that they can just buy this software and the AI is going to invest for them and they're going to make a ton of money. Now, I know there are billions of dollars that are going to be made, but it's going to be made by the hackers and the scammers. The hackers are going to sell fake AI stock picking software that actually is malware that will attack the investors' machines and maybe the organizations. And then you've got the scammers who will package just regular old stock picking software and say it's AI enhanced. That is going to be into the tens of billions of dollars. So that's a good bet. And the third part of that is people that buy AI stock picking software, even if it's legitimate, they're going to find that there's so many variables that they have to do to make it actually work before they'll make it. A lot of people think they could put in $5,000, leave it to just buy stocks, and in a month they'll have $50,000, which is not the case at all.
5 years from now, 10 years from now, what are companies going to be doing to protect themselves?
It's going to ramp up. One of the things is cyber insurance. I think that's going to be mandatory. Another thing is the equipment is improving all the time as far as detection devices. I've bought millions of dollars of equipment in my role as a director of infrastructure, where I had multiple teams. So the stuff that used to cost millions is now costing thousands of dollars. That's how good that it's become. People at home, they even have firewalls that they're using too. So there's been a huge awareness change, and there's been a huge change as far as the sophistication and the evolving of the equipment itself and the features that it can do. In the old days, we needed separate pieces of equipment to do different features. Now they bundle them all together into one piece of equipment and can do everything that tons of different pieces would do.
I recently read that hackers are trying a lot harder to get in than a lot of companies are trying to keep them out.
Well, that's their job. That's their only form of income. And you got to consider there's startups, right? What is their real motivation? It's growth. It's not investing most of their money into cybersecurity and the equipment and the employee needs. That's kind of an afterthought. When I first started in the business back in the Wild West, I would get a call and I'd create an ID for a manager without knowing anything, because we were growing so fast in a startup. So can you imagine a political organization too, where there is a campaign and they have volunteers working and they get a phone call to add, you or I, and they'll say, oh, what do they need? They need administrator privileges. So that's another thing any company needs to know is who has the privileges to be able to do damage to your company, because they should have the least amount of privileges just to get the job done.
So with cybersecurity certainly on a rise and the cost of cyber breaches on the rise, what do entities need to be doing today to be ready for the demands of cybersecurity tomorrow?
That's a great question, because they have to have visionaries inside their company, because cybersecurity and IT operations work together, but they're two different things. They're apples and oranges. Like when I would work at a company, my team would be the cybersecurity team that would help the IT operations team get stuff done. And then there would be a third team that would come in and audit me, monitoring and helping IT. So it can't just be IT operations where people say, oh, let IT worry about it. We have a great IT. You don't know if you have a great IT for cybersecurity or not until you get under the hood and see actually what's going on. So the thing that I feel is investment in cybersecurity has to really ramp up for a lot of these companies.
So a lot of companies are going to need to dedicate personnel to the protection of their systems. They're going to need to really focus on cybersecurity as a strategic initiative.
Only if they want to stay in business, because 6 out of 10 small and medium businesses that get breached will be severely hurt to the point where they are not functioning and can go out of business.
All right, well, great. Thank you, John. I want to thank you for being on the show and sharing your insights. We're going to do a leadership panel when Garrett joins us in just a few minutes. So you'll stick around for that?
Absolutely.
Terrific.
Thank you, Jay.
It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from EY. In 2023, organizations faced an average of 44 cyber incidents. The detection and response times for these incidents average 6 months or longer. Now, consider that new adversaries are attacking with increased stealth and speed using the latest technology, and you get a snowball effect of financial and regulatory impacts. It's now time for today's Leadership Countdown. Today's countdown comes from Forbes.com. We bring you 5 cybersecurity myths that companies should debunk. Number 5, cyber attacks are an external threat. Number 4, all you need are strong passwords, firewalls, and antivirus. Number 3, the IT department is solely responsible for cybersecurity. Number 2, only businesses need to worry about cyber attacks. And the top cybersecurity myth that needs to be debunked is cyber defense is all about technical skills. Don't go anywhere. We have Garrett Graychick in the studio right after a word from the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership. The Bringing Learning to Work program is our way of connecting the faculty of Cal State Fullerton with the business community of Orange County and Southern California. We have over 72 training programs that are available via distance or face-to-face. And the faculty come to your company and they deliver the training to your employees.
The Bringing Learning to Work program is really fundamentally, it's leadership programming. We do diversity and emotional intelligence training. We partner with Cal State Fullerton because they had subject matter experts in these fields, and we're really fortunate and privileged to be able to do that.
Many companies can't afford training and development personnel, and so this is a great opportunity to leverage Cal State's faculty to help them develop their learning programs.
The leadership of the center and the students allow me to not only bring leadership development to my company, but allow me to interact with some amazing students who have grit, potential, and just amazing futures in front of them, and I get to take part of that. It's a wonderful feeling.
When your organization is ready to develop its talent, reach out to the Center for Leadership, and we'll help get you there. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest is Garrett Graychek. Garrett is a certified ethical hacker with 13 U.S. patents for information security products. He has close to 30 years of IT security product creation and delivery experiences. His cybersecurity influence has impacted such well-known companies as Office Depot, Oppenheimer, Dish Network, HP.com, Ticketmaster, U.S. Navy, and the EPA. His innovations include revolutionary two-factor and the first zero-trust AI solution for user integrity validation. Please welcome to the show, Garrett Graychek.
Great, thanks.
Garrett, thanks for being on the show to share your wisdom and your experiences with our viewers.
Thanks for allowing me to be here.
That's terrific. So let's talk about your background. How did you find your way into cybersecurity? What got you excited about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was an Austinite in the 80s, okay? Programmer like everyone else seemed to be at the time in the 80s, right? Did some traveling, went to places like, did some programming in Canada, did some programming in Germany, wound up in SoCal because a buddy said, I'm starting an IT company. And I was like, that's what you do. You start IT companies, right? We needed data. We needed data. So what we figured out how to do is, and I'll admit it, we hacked into systems to get the data. And I was intrigued. I was intrigued how easy it was, unfortunately, right? And I was intrigued on the mechanisms that would prevent such attacks. From there, I joined up with great companies. A company people don't know today was called Security Dynamics. They made the first two-factor key fobs, okay? They made so much money on that, they bought RSA. So that became RSA Security, which most people recognize. From there, I went on to other companies such as IBM and Cisco, and then finally formed my own two-factor company. And that was based on, and I would say this is the best way to start companies, based on my experience of deploying the products of the day. And a solution just came to me. And it was called SecureAuth, and that was eventually sold for $225 million. I then went into AI, and then the industry drew me back, said, Garrett, there needs to be this solution. And that's how the computer industry really works. We're all connected, we're all talking to each other all the time. And I got a bunch of phone calls that said, Garrett, you built this for what's called identity management. There is a huge hole in the market for a simple identity governance product.
So it seems like there's a lot of folks that are in the cybersecurity field who are, at their very nature, actually really good at hacking systems.
Yeah. The biggest problem in IT companies is internal threat. Okay? I mean, because those people in the enterprises know how to get to the data. I mean, we all knew. I remember we had the first email systems. We all knew how to read each other's emails. We all knew where the files were. We all basically stole each other's emails because they were in clear text and all that. So yes, IT people, hacking is really just malicious or non-approved ways of using data and using the same mechanism which are legitimate. That's why hackers sometimes go on both sides of the line, because it's really the same actions, just how you're going to do it.
So what does it mean to be an ethical hacker?
Yeah, an ethical hacker is the concept that we call it, loosely, the white hats, okay? That we understand what the mechanisms of hacking are, and then we aid the community, the cyber community, in feeding back to the cyber community and say, this is what the hacks are, this is how you mitigate them, and then we do our best to communicate those ways of mitigation to the world.
So really, if in the cybersecurity world, if this were like the Old West, the ethical hacker, they're the good guys.
Yeah, 100%.
And then the hackers are
the black hats. It's black hats and the white hats. That's how we refer to it all the time.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about UAttest, this company that you formed. Tell us about UAttest and how this company is ensuring that enterprises stay secure.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little metaphor that helps me explain to the rest of the world what UAttest is and what a complicated idea is. It's called identity attestation. Who approves who has what and what access? So this is the world in the last 20 years. We built these amazing, amazing systems called identity management systems. They give us identities, and I say us, I mean enterprise companies. They give us identities, be it a school, an enterprise, et cetera. They have identities, and then they give us access. There's all this great access to all these tools, all these SaaS, software as a service products. Single sign-on, you got it. That was really fast. Okay, I grew up a Midwesterner. Let me give you a metaphor. It's like the World War II planes, okay? Those things were amazing. They had amazing engines, okay? Came back, the P-47s, the P-51s. Detroit took them and threw them into cars, okay? Threw them into Cadillacs, threw them into Lincolns. And these things are screaming down those highways 100 and 120 miles an hour, and they're still using drum brakes, okay? So they killed a lot of people because the engines were better than the brakes. That's where we are now in 2023. The engine, these IAM engines that are giving us all these accesses. Oh, Garrett, you just joined in sales. I'll give you these access to these 5 applications. You join in HR. I'm going to give you these 10 applications. Who's checking a year, 3 months, 2 years down the road what access Garrett has? Whether he should have that access or does he have malicious access? That's where UAttest comes in. It is a product that plugs into the existing systems and says, okay, enterprise, you, the ethical hackers, you, the good guys, can look at all the privileges and figure out who has access and who should have access right now.
So it helps identify a lot of vulnerabilities that are inherent in the access of a company.
Jay, I'm an identity person. I would look at anyone in the eye and say the number one vulnerability, the number one. You can say, no, it's malware on my Android or it's this iPhone app. The number one vulnerability is identity. Someone gets the identity and then wreaks havoc in our enterprise. Yes.
So let's talk about the difference in the cybersecurity world between offense and defense. Could you just talk about what it means when we talk about cybersecurity offense and cybersecurity defense?
It's proactive and versus reactive. And I am not disparaging reactive. Reactive is hugely important. When a hack occurs, some of the best and brightest people in the cyber community jump into it, and there are great companies that do this. They jump in and they say, hold it, let me do my forensics, let me figure out what was happening. We got to mitigate it. We got to stop the bleeding. That's reactive. That's defensive. Okay. Now, y'all, what we really got to get better at
being proactive,
is proactive,
which is offense.
It is offense. Is how do we take our systems? And this is what's not generally best understood in the rest of the world is our systems they're simply not cohesive. You give it an application here, you get a server there, you got a device here, and now the enterprise, for better or for worse, has a hodgepodge. There's a hodgepodge of solutions. How do we proactively not only tie that together, but govern that and say all of this is secure? Because that's what hackers do. They're always looking for a vulnerability. And I have to say, there are real good white hats out there employed by institutions like the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, who come up with something called the Cybersecurity Framework, the CSF, right? And says, these are your best practices. These are your best practice enterprise for all of your applications. And it's written in a technology agnostic way that says, however we want to do this, we can best apply these principles. That's the proactive approach, is applying principles like the CFF to all of our enterprise and all of our enterprise IT.
So the best time to address cybersecurity is before you've been compromised.
Yeah, once you're compromised, you're in damage control, right? You're trying to figure out where that data went. You want to figure out that, and you're shutting that down. You're not redesigning your system.
So you don't want to wait till it's too late.
No.
Okay, so let's talk about the cloud. Why are so many organizations moving all of their operations and data to the cloud?
This
What's
cloud's
going on?
great. I mean, straight up, first of all, huge cloud advocate, huge IT advocate, okay? The cloud wins because it's great. It's what we, in the West always want. It is faster and it's cheaper, okay? It's like, I mean, I don't even know if I could take a 20-year-old IT kid and say, hey, go spin me up 3 servers, okay? There's a server room, knock yourself out. He'd probably look at him and go, what? He goes, where's your interface? Where is your cloud? He would ask me as the enterprise executive, where is your cloud located? He is talking about, he believes that the enterprise has something called infrastructure as a service, IaaS, right? That's an acronym, but you already know what I'm talking about because that's Amazon. That's the Google cloud. That's where their servers are. That's your Microsoft's cloud. And there's others, Oracle and others. Those are your big cloud companies. It wins because enterprises can quickly spin up new services and new servers instantaneously. That's why the cloud is great and it's wonderful.
So the cloud's faster, it's
Yes.
cheaper, it's maybe more convenient.
Yes.
Is it safer from a cybersecurity standpoint?
Probably not. I mean, I probably not. Team, I look at it straight out there. What were we really safe? Probably we're safer when we all just had those big mainframes and only 3 people knew how to get on them. Okay, but that's not 2023, is it? Right?
No.
We have to be delivering solutions that we have to democratize IT. Everyone needs to get access. Everyone needs to have the ability to spin up new services and whatever. So we have to secure the cloud.
So let's talk about data security on the cloud. What are some of the data breaches that we're seeing on the cloud?
That's a long list. Okay.
Okay.
I personally focus on the identity ones. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, we all heard of probably. There's no way. At least in my brain here is the big MGM and the casino hacks. Okay. Straight out an identity breach. What someone did is manipulated their IAM tool to redirect all the authentication traffic to themselves. Okay. That was a major hack. And was it cloud-based? Yes. Once again, we have to go to the cloud. We just have to do a better job securing the cloud.
Okay, so how can companies protect themselves from cloud breaches? What are some of the things we can do to make ourselves more secure?
And that's why, I can get into hypothetical discussions. That's why I usually do bring up a standard like the cybersecurity framework that itemizes for us. Really smart people sit in rooms. I've been in this meetings, and they bring the best and the brightest, and they say, these are the items we have to do to secure any enterprise. It's healthcare, finance, defense industry. They itemize the practices, the policies, then the implementation, the 2-factor, right? The review of your identities, how you deploy things. We have to go through these steps for all of our IT equipment and ensure they're put in place.
So your specialty, you're familiar with a lot of things, but your specialty is in the identity space.
Absolutely.
So what is identity management software? Like, how does it work? What is that?
Identity management software is this. You come to your work and you go, okay, great. I log on my email. That was something. I logged onto my device. There was an identity into that. I went into my sales tool, like Salesforce, right? I went into my work environment, Workday, something like that. How did all that happen? How did one identity that you logged on get you into all these systems? That's identity management. And that's fantastic stuff, but it's also what the hackers now have figured out to attack.
There's vulnerabilities.
Of course, there's vulnerabilities in everything. So not picking on any vendor. There's always going to be vulnerabilities.
Okay. So if people want to understand this better, what are some of the key terms or the key concepts that they've got to get familiar with and start to master?
That's a great question. Start with the concept of identity and identity management. In the acronyms in the world, and our IT guys, it's IAM, right?
IAM.
But what you also have to understand is that's the deployment of the identity, right? 3 months after that, if you're not doing what's called identity governance, if you're not looking, who did I give access to? Who did Bob get access to, right? Then your identities are all over the map, and the hackers like that. The hackers like that. Remember, IDs are cheap out there, guys. They really are. There's literally a cost for identity. I give anyone an identity and say, what's the cost of that? And what they like to steal are the low value ones because they're cheap, and then they run their tools against it, right? And then what do? They see how much they can get done with that ID. And if you're not governing your IDs, you just gave the hacker an easy time of moving through your enterprise and then stealing resources.
What other principles are going to be key for folks that want to keep their themselves cyber secure?
What I just detailed there, and it's a great discussion, is the principle of least privilege. Garrett, you have a job. You have a job at this company. I worked for IBM. I worked for Motorola and stuff. This is your job. This is only what you should see, right? And if Garrett has access to these resources, and that's where all your insider threat comes from, right? He's in sales, but he's also manipulating the finances, right? That's not implementing the principle of least privilege. The principle of least privilege keeps us safe from external threats, so that you don't have access to them, and internal fraud, internal threats as well. We have to be looking what our identity systems give access to.
So it's very much a strategic decision that needs to be made at the company level. We can't just give access to people and say, oh, I trust them, they'll be fine. Because that access then becomes more vulnerable to outside hackers or outside influencers.
100%. Just giving blatant access would be every hacker out there would go, yeah, Garrett, tell them to do that. That's what I want them to do, right? No, we especially in the enterprises that hold what is called in the industry sensitive data, personal healthcare information, personal identifiable information, controlled unclassified information. That's for the defense. We, as a community, are obligated under regulations to restrict the access of what users who have that access can do and can see.
And so there are probably some very high-level executives that instinctively say, I want access to everything. But you'd actually recommend, not necessarily. You might not want access to everything because then your identity becomes vulnerable to everything.
The hackers are good. They're not only technically good, they're also what I call Kevin Mitnick good, which is a famous hacker, okay? And he was much more social engineering. Just call up the help desk and scream at them, okay? And say, I need access. You're wasting my time. I'm in Estonia on a business deal. That type of stuff. Yeah, that stuff has to be mitigated because that's how the hackers get access to systems as well.
All right, well, great. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show and sharing your insights around cybersecurity, but also identity management. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks, Jay.
And we're going to stick around. We're going to have our leadership panel here in a few minutes. John's going to come back out. We're going to the three of us are going to have some conversation about this.
That should be a lot of fun.
Terrific. It's now time for our leadership example. Today's leadership example comes from Forbes.com. We bring you the 15 most cyber secure companies of 2023. It's now time for today's leadership lesson. Today's leadership lesson will be delivered by Professor Sanjini Mitra.
I'm Dr. Sanjini Mitra, and here's today's leadership lesson. In today's digitally connected world, cybersecurity is a topic of critical interest to businesses, organizations, and individuals alike. As technology advances with time, the cybersecurity landscape continues to evolve rapidly, bringing along many new challenges and threats. Cyber criminals are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their tactics, leveraging advanced technologies like AI and machine learning and exploiting vulnerabilities in online systems. It has thus become extremely important to enhance security in all spheres via more stringent measures to verify the identity of an authorized user before enabling access to critical systems, a process called authentication. In today's lesson, I will discuss 3 different authentication methods along with the benefits and shortcomings of each. These are traditional methods, biometric authentication, and multi-factor authentication. Traditional authentication methods based on PINs and passwords have several weaknesses. Users typically choose weak passwords and PINs that are easy to remember, like 1234 or the word password itself, hence easy to guess by criminals also. These are thus extremely vulnerable to various cyber attacks. Strong password and PINs are difficult to design and remember, especially for multiple different applications. Biometric authentication is the technology of identifying people based on physical and behavioral traits called biometrics, such as face and fingerprints. Biometrics address the problems underlying traditional methods since there is no need to remember or design anything and are almost impossible to steal, forge, or forget. Hence, biometric authentication methods are arguably more secure than traditional methods. However, as with any technology, biometrics also have certain limitations. Mobile biometric systems have been bypassed with 3D synthetic fake images on both Apple and Samsung devices, for example. So the need arises to make these systems even more secure with the help of what is called multimodal biometrics or multi-factor authentication, MFA for short. MFA synthesizes information from 2 or more different sources. For instance, face and fingerprints, or even fingerprints and a password, to devise a new mechanism that is expected to provide greater security, improve performance, and enhance robustness in controlled conditions. It is thus significantly more difficult to bypass an MFA, although the implementation time might be slightly longer. So what is the road ahead for cybersecurity in organizations? As more and more technology innovations occur, cybersecurity will continue to remain at the forefront of all challenges. Significant steps to improve cybersecurity infrastructure include continuous R&D, development of education and training programs to raise security awareness among people, and introduction of continuous threat assessment protocols and effective mitigation measures to safeguard critical systems. I am Sinjini Mitra, and this has been your leadership lesson.
Thank you, Professor Mitra, for that insightful leadership lesson. We're back for our leadership panel. John and Garrett, thank you so much for rejoining us so we can talk some more about cybersecurity.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We have a series of questions, and you'll each get a chance to answer each question. I've got 4 questions. John will answer the first question. Garrett, you'll also have a chance to answer it afterwards. Our first question is about risks. So John, where are some of the biggest cybersecurity risks for which organizations need to prepare?
I think, Jay, that executives need to prepare their mindset on the tremendous amount of different risks that are either external or within their own organization. And I've seen that change over the years. When I started, there was almost no risk. Now, everywhere you turn, there's some kind of either cybersecurity risk or a productivity risk due to data loss.
What about you, Garrett?
There's reports that show straight out where the risk quantify come from. There's something called the Verizon Data Breach Report, okay? And it's kind of a standard for us in authentication and in risk. And it says 65% of the attacks are coming from identities, credentials. So to me, an enterprise that wants to address risk has to start with their identities.
So that's really where a lot of these things are happening. So thank you. So our second question is about breaches. And Garrett's going to answer this one first. So Garrett, what happens to organizations that get breached?
Once again, not hypothetical. And we just saw the casino hacks. Everyone knows those. You know, they got hit with lawsuits the same week they announced it for $100 million. But that's not it. The company that was involved in it just had another hack, the IT company, and their stock dropped $2 billion. So it's not hypothetical what happens when a breach happens.
It can be catastrophic.
Catastrophic, absolutely.
John?
Loss of reputation with investors, with customers. As Garrett said, with the stock market, you can take a really big hit on the market share. But there are so many other things that can happen with a company once they are breached, people are not going to want to come and do business with someone that's been breached because their information, whether they're a company or an individual, might be out there on the street for hackers to use.
So trust becomes a big consequence.
Huge issue.
All right. So our third question is going to be, John will answer first. It is about AI interface with cybersecurity. So how do you see AI interacting with cybersecurity today and in the future?
I think about this every day, Jay, because that's really one of my most important sections of what I do in cybersecurity. I've been interested in AI and AI voice cloning for the last years. Here's what's going to happen. A lot of jobs that are being done by individuals right now will be taken over by AI in the future. I can give you a couple right now. Penetration testing is one of the most glamorous jobs and entry level that people want to get. But why would someone have a company of human penetration testers who are going to try to exploit vulnerabilities? And it would take time if they had 20 vulnerabilities to go through all of them when the AI could find them all at once and start to try to exploit them all at once. It's a huge time saving. Another one is identity creation. Why would you have a group of people creating identities when it could be automated and the AI would be able to flag any problems and set up the accounts and the identities perfectly from the jump?
What about you, Garrett? How do you see AI interfacing with cybersecurity?
Yeah, and we should not forget that the good guys aren't the only guys using AI, okay? What is not really well understood is that the hackers aren't just a unified group. What they are is different segments do different work. They have broken up the work of hacking. They'll have one group that does nothing but look at the vulnerabilities, okay? It's called the CVEs, the Critical Vulnerabilities and Exposure List. That comes out. They see that list, and then they create a hack around it. Then another group says, okay, I will buy that exploit, and I will run it my way. And then another group might do the ransomware. What's important is the hackers are using AI. They can find these vulnerabilities faster and then create exploits faster, which means us with the white hats on this side, we've got to be faster in knowing our own vulnerabilities and creating the mitigation efforts.
So you have more specialists.
Yes.
And there's an actual, like a supply chain of hacking
Yes.
that is taking place, and people can become really strong in certain parts of the supply chain.
Yes.
If you call it supply chain, is just a terrible word to use.
I think it's
For a
accurate.
crime ring, but
Yeah.
so it's now time for a featured part of our show. It's time for the final word. This is where each of you get to give one final pearl of wisdom or piece of advice to our viewers. And Garrett, you are going to go first.
Well, I wouldn't strongly believe this if I wasn't doing it. That's what I'm doing 12 hours a day. I believe where we have to go in IT to secure this is we have to add an extra set of eyes on our actions. That we've been talking a couple of times, the casino hack. There was a major change that happened in the policy, and that caused the hackers and gave them access. We need an extra set of eyes, and you brought up AI, and yes, that should be AI tools looking at our policies and our groups and our permissions to automate the good side, automate the responses.
Okay. John, it's time for your final word.
Any company that doesn't have AI incorporated into their tool set in the future, they're not going to make it because AI is going to change the game for everybody. Now, on a personal level, everyone really has to be suspicious of what is going on in their daily digital interface with the internet, or if just getting phone calls. Corporations really have to understand that cybersecurity isn't an overhead expense. It's a must-have.
And there you have our final word. Thank you both, Garrett and John, for being on today's show. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. It's been great to have you as guests.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jay.
Jay. Appreciate it.
If you have a question or need advice, connect with us by email, leadership@fullerton.edu, or on Instagram @CSUF_CFL. Thank you for tuning in to today's show, where we've discussed everything you need to know about cybersecurity. Thanks to our featured guests, John Young and Garrett Graychick, for sharing your expertise on this important topic. A special thanks to Professor Sanjini Mitra for delivering our leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice, where wisdom from experts guides our leadership path. I'm Jay Barbuto here at the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership at Cal State Fullerton, and we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.